Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Today I've got another great guest lined up. I've got Søren Meyer, the driving force behind ZeroNorth's, joining us on the podcast. And together with his partners and customers, ZeroNorth's appeared on my radar after I was reading that they're leading the green transition of the shipping industry by harnessing the power of technology and data to optimize business efficiency while supporting decarbonization efforts at the same time. And from their headquarters in Copenhagen, Denmark, ZeroNorth has developed a platform that enables vessel owners and operators to optimize their voyages, vessels, and ultimately reducing CO2 emissions and contributing to the industry's decarbonization journey. And in today's rapidly transforming global economy, I invited him on here to discuss how data can provide stability for companies that keep trade moving. Because unlike humans, data doesn't have to make snap decisions based on currently available weather information or react impulsively to geopolitical changes. By contrast, data offers a solid foundation for decision-making in face of any challenges that have emerged over the past few years. So today we're going to navigate uncharted digital waters together and learn how ZeroNorth is helping to save both dollars and emissions by using data to drive better decisions, promoting efficiency and foster genuine progress in the shipping industry. And I must admit, the shipping industry is not an area of my expertise, so I'm looking forward to learning more about this. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Denmark, where Søren is going to talk about digital technologies and data and the roles that both of them can play in ensuring a more stable and sustainable future for global trade. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Søren. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Thanks so much for inviting. So my name is Søren. I'm the CEO and founder of a software company called ZeroNorth, which is really working on trying to transform and help the shipping industry or maritime become green and take out emissions of the supply chain.
There's a lot to unpack there. I'd love to find out more about how you got to your current role. So can I ask you to share your origin story, where your passion for tech came from and solving this problem, and also what would ultimately put you on this path you're on today?
Yeah, so probably a little bit maybe different, I don't know. I come from a business background, so I don't come from a tech background, but find it fascinating to solve complex problems. And I think the trend right now is that tech is kind of the way that you solve complicated challenges. So I come from a oil trading background for many years, been trading oil for plus 20 years, and then I went into the shipping side of it, joined Maersk Tankers back in 2015, and got more into the shipping side of that, and really saw the combination of how, like any commodity on the world, like oil, grain, anything is moved by vessel, right? So you have like 90% of everything is moved on a vessel, often more than once. And when you then look at the supply chain and the complexity there, that got me into saying with the company here, how could we do that in a better way? So really coming from the business angle and want to solve a big problem of how to optimize logistics.
And the reason I asked that question is I think I've done 2,400 interviews now, and nobody or very few people set out of, I want to enter the tech industry. It's very often it's about solving a problem first and then the tech comes later. And I think there's a big lesson in that as well, because in some business circles, it's all about the shiny tech solution before even thinking about the problem. So that's so refreshing to hear. And of course, that path would lead you to ZeroNorth. So can you tell me a little bit more about the story behind the company, those problems you set out to solve with technology, and also how it got its name too?
It's always like interesting when you found a company and finding out, okay, what should we call this, right? And because it's something that sticks to you. And one of the things I actually quickly realized is that the legal side and the ability to own a certain name is quite important when you get a name going, right? So we set some parameters and say, okay, we need to be able to own the .com domain of the company. So that was like a corner flag of ours. But then really beginning to think about who are we, who's our story, and our story is very much around entering from the heritage coming out of Maersk, being which everybody in the maritime kind of knows, and understands being a big global provider to the shipping industry. We really wanted to have something that was close to our heritage while being as independent owned company. And there we then went to different opportunities and finding a name that really showed us a compass, really showed us direction. And there we think that ZeroNorth is a very clear direction for us on where we're going with the company.
I love that. And of course, if we look back, the chaos of the last few years has created a exponentially changing environment in the industry. So can you expand on how the macroeconomic and geopolitical upheaval of the past few years has created a challenging environment for companies that keep the world moving? Because there's a lot of things that, like the supply chain, that we took for granted for many years. Things just happen. We didn't need to know about it. But of course, that all changed in recent months and years, hasn't it?
Indeed. And then often you look at maritime and people think about the containers. Yeah. That's where the go-to is, right? What is there? 5,000-6,000 container ships in the world, and there's like 52,000 vessels, commercial vessels on the waters, right? The rest of them is like transporting oil, they're transporting lumber, they're transporting, of course, coal is still there, grain, anything you are like consuming has been raw materials, and all of that has been moved on a vessel prior to getting into the factory, which eventually get into the container and to your stores, right? So for us, it's really important to remember that the maritime industry is much more complex than just the container side of the industry. So we focus on the entire value chain and all of the vessels out there. And that adds to that complexity. You're talking about supply chain, right? That is not only the last part of the last mile that you have to look at the entirety.
And of course, shipping is at the sharp end of all the challenges that you just mentioned there. And it is integral to global trade. It serves the entire planet and has underpinned a globalized economy in which each and every person to this podcast listening.
It's like it's 3% of all global emissions is coming out of shipping, right? So like wow. 3%. So it's quite significant and much bigger than we realize, right? And then I also like just positioning, the oceans are like so vast, we forget like how big it is, right? And when you take a vessel and you want to go from A to B, there's no roads. Like you are like the roads is like your choice. So I think there's so much that can be done on how do you actually get most optimal from A to B, which is our core and what we do and help the industry do.
I know. And a lot of people forget that the planet that we all reside on is 71% water. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
But of course, everything we're talking about is under threat from the pace and scale of transformation happening across the global economy. So can you expand on why this is, where digital technologies and particularly data can actually take a new and central role in everything we're talking about today?
Yes. And when you look at the value chain of the maritime, right, and the 3% of emissions coming out, it's very much around understanding, okay, which vessel should I move a certain cargo from A to B? When I've decided what vessel I need to move, I need to use data to kind of be able to understand how a vessel will perform on a certain given route before I actually do take that commercial decision. And then as soon as I've taken the commercial decisions, I need to be able in real time to understand, is my vessel actually sailing the right speed and the right route? Where my best analog in this is very much like when you drive a car earlier, you kind of didn't understand traffic. You maybe had this radio with, I don't know if you remember, I do, of like you went across Europe and you'll have this TA traffic alert. Yeah. And then you'll be alerted if there's traffic ahead, right? And you'll bring out the big map and say, should I deviate or should I stay on the highway or what should I do, right? Shipping is a little bit the same, right? There's no GPS, there's no Google map that is telling you how to get from A to B. And that's basically what we built for the oceans, is like a route optimization engine that really helps the vessel get from A to B and then understand. I don't know if so I drive a Tesla. I like the car a lot because of the technology, right? It's solving a problem of getting from A to B. But there's really like telling me now, what is your energy consumption if you, from the wind and weather, did you drive too fast? Did you use too much air conditioning? Or did you like compare to what it had expected, right? And it's so precise of really determining how much energy do I use from going to A to B, and it will tell me where to recharge the car or the battery. Shipping is the exact same now. What we're building our platform is the same of saying, how does the vessel get most optimal? What are the energy consumers you are having, right? The numbers are just much bigger on oceans. So therefore, you easily can get 10 to 20% optimization out of this, which is a lot of money and a lot of emissions.
Incredibly cool what you're doing here. We do find ourselves in an era where decisions are becoming harder to make in businesses in every industry, especially where strategic goals are becoming much more multifaceted. And there is this movement towards data-driven decision making. So in your industry, can you tell the listeners a little bit more about why making good use of data can actually create a pathway to a more stable sector?
So it's back to this that the globe is like, what is it, 71% water, right? So when you get the outskirts, right, collecting data is not easy. Like we are so used to have so granular data now at shore, but when you get to the oceans, you don't have that. It's actually not very common at all that vessel has IoT devices of reporting high frequently data. So you have to to make solutions that doesn't have like the depth of data, but have the width of data. So you need a lot of vessels in order to really have that kind of data insights. So you'll get a position from a vessel every 10, 15 minutes. You'll get weather in quite big areas and so on, right? And those are the big factors. Where is the vessel actually? What's the weather around the vessel? How's the vessel performing? So you need to collect that data set in order to do anything. And quite surprisingly, like crews on a vessel, they will spend 2 to 3 hours a day on filling in Excel sheets of sending one daily report back to shore. And that's the data set you get. And when you do that, right, we all know how, I would say human we are, right? We jump the corners, meaning that the data entered is often just being repeated, right? Because it's like too cumbersome. So what we've really done is how do we help the crew of pre-filling that data set by predicting what will be the consumption by taking external weather factors in and so on. So make it much easier and then have the crew validate the data coming in. So you get more correct data coming in. With that data set, you can then do multiple different things, right? And you can enable those people at shore who's actually taking the decisions. So eventually it is the people at shore that's taking the decision on where's the vessel going, what speed are the vessel going to go at, and what's the consumption be. And then they will send it out to the vessel. The vessel is ultimately then responsible for staying safe. So, of course, they can overrule what's being done at shore. So that actually now means you have to have shore and the vessel being able to look at the same data set, right? And being able to work together. So like our platform is like a little bit, if you go back a few years, and you worked in PowerPoint, I'm certain we all know this one where you sent one PowerPoint to another and then who owns the master and what version was it, right? Now we all work in the same document. We just co-share, we just co-update, and we can see each other, and it's live versionizing on what we're having. We do the same, right? So that the shore and vessel can actually see the same and can collaborate on the platform of how do I get most optimal from A to B. So that's is collecting the data, making the data into algorithmic updates, but then make it actionable. We have a such strong belief that it's not about showing dashboards and BI and so on. It's really about turning the data into actions. What should I do now in order to make a more optimal commercial decision?
And we do find ourselves in a period of economic uncertainty at the moment, and it has never been more important to ensure that money is not being left on the table during this period of transformation. And I think data and digitally enabled platforms can identify and eliminate the inefficiency headroom and also create more profitable operations in the near term. But just to bring to life everything that we're talking about today, are there any use cases or client stories you can share that will just help listeners understand how you're tackling all these issues with ZeroNorth and the kind of destination that you can help people in the industry get to?
Yeah, and what I love about this industry is really around that when you save $1, you save emissions.
Yeah,
because it's fuel, right? So when you talk about making more money, we talk about optimization. We also talk about emissions, right? And you say, like, we made a thorough study around vessels that we have been optimizing versus vessels that was not on our platform last year, right? And we could document more than 440,000 tons of CO2 emissions being less polluted because of the vessels being routed and optimized, right? And I moved to this small Danish island and into a farm, and then I changed my heating system. And I got this, it's from air to water heating system. And I got a 32-page report of saying, you really did a good investment here. I think it was like 20,000 US. And you save 10 tons of CO2 emissions by changing my heating system. And they're like, okay, but if I go to work and I save 440,000 CO2 emissions, it's probably a little bit more worth for me to go to work, right?
Yeah.
So it's just magnitude of the oceans are so, and the numbers there are so big, right, that we can really make an impact. And I think that drives people that, like, we are more than 200 people now, where, like, and the company is less than 3 years old. So really driving hard to scale, and that's what's motivating people, that they make an impact. They make a real impact.
Wow, so many great points in that, because I think sustainability is a huge trend right now. So on that side of things, can you tell me a little more about how data can help that sector make progress on decarbonization in line with all these factors and not despite them? Because I love that line you use, save $1, you save emissions too.
Yes. And it's really about connecting the players across the value chain, right?
Yeah.
I think when you have a cargo of, let's say, grain coming out of one place in the world going to another, well, you'll probably have 7-10 people involved in the supply chain, and they will all be looking at own data or different data. They won't align on what's actually the economics of it. They will have contractual obligations that will hamper optimization, because they made a contract, and if I can make $1 and you lose $1, well, I made it, so then I don't care, right? So I think what data really can do here in a data platform like ours can make that transparency between the different players across the value chain, being from, again, what vessel should I pick, until how do I get from A to B, how's the vessel performing while I'm sailing, where should I refuel the vessel, which is a big part of our platform as well. It's really helping finding out what's the best location and by which supplier to refuel the vessel, and then do all of the analytical and the reporting on that, right? So it's about making people work together and make sure when we make $1, we share the $1. We don't try to take it from each other. And I think by having that attitude and showing that kind of transparency, we can make a big difference. But it's a journey, right? Because people are used to having a way of doing business. So you have to change their mindset as well. And that goes, I have to say, unfortunately, a little bit slow, but adapting I think we could adapt even faster. I have to say, the maritime industry is a conservative one. They need to see proof points like any other industry, of course. But I think we could actually do more if we collectively pushed harder.
Wow. And I've got to ask, what's next for you? Where do you go from here? What's your big focus at ZeroNorth? Because I get the impression listening to you, you're not just about, this is the problem we're solving today. There's a much, much bigger problem that you're looking at solving here.
Yeah. So again, we are less than 3 years old, and we have gotten from what are we optimized now? Around 4,000 vessels across our different services. We started by having one core dedicated service around this voice optimization, how to get from A to B, now expanding that to 6 services. So anything around like collecting data, selecting the best vessel for a certain trip, to the voice optimization still, to understand the energy consumers, to the bunkering, to the analytics, all across, right? So it's been, our dedication right now is really building that universe and scaling and helping our customers reap value. So I think I often say in ZeroNorth, and I'm not always being too applauded for it, because I say it's not about building great technology. It's about building great technology, sell great technology, and get use of great technology. So of course you have to build great technology, but you really need to help your customers get value out of it. Otherwise, it's not going to make anybody any profits, right? And eventually, it is a business. We have to make a profit. The longer term is really this vision around connecting and changing the way the industry is conducting business. And through that, really take those 15, 20% emissions off the table, make more money. And everyone would that knows a little bit about the industry will say that we are in a transition to green fuels, right? So that we can go to like zero emissions by doing methanol or ammonia in the future, right? Those fuels will be 3 to 8 times more expensive. So I'm like saying, if we don't do and take the benefits that we provide, we can't afford those new fuels. So we have to do it. We have to, as an industry, really go in and change the way that we're operating in order for us to afford that greener future. So that's our vision. Enable that industry, really drive the industry to be able to afford the green new future.
That's such a powerful moment to end on. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time and investing your time to share your insights and bringing this subject to life today. And I'm going to see if there's something we can do for you in return now, because some of the biggest names in business, VC funding and tech have either been guests or listened to this podcast. So I'm going to ask you now, is there a person that you'd love to have a private breakfast or lunch with, and why? Because he or she might just hear this, so we'll see what we can manifest together and throw out into the universe. But who would that person be?
Actually, I think I got a lot of inspiration, and of course now you like one person, right? Like,
yeah,
I say one that has been forefronting, and I think we haven't recognized enough of the contribution for the climate has actually been Al Gore, and has an investment fund on generation. I think they've done some great work, and I think it really has been on the forefront. So I think that would be interesting. So, well, how's that going, right? But when you then look and you have the other big VC funds beyond net zero with General Atlantic and so on as well, right? So I think there's really big money coming into the industry that is driving a big change. For more inspiration, I think it will be a combination of three, right? I think like an Elon Musk, a Warren Buffett, and Adam Neumeyer from WeWork, right? So one from being very visionary to, okay, how do you actually have a long-term sustainability from Warren Buffett, and then how do you have one being crashing as WeWork did, right? So I think there's a lot of learnings you can take from both success stories, but also stories that didn't materialize. So I think that would be my answer to. A little bit long, not one, but a lot of inspiration out there to drive and build a company like ours.
No, that is brilliant. A lot of positivity thrown out into the ether there. We'll see what we can manifest together. But for everyone listening that just wants to find out more information about Zero North, maybe they want to learn more about the subject, maybe they want to work with you and carry on the conversation with your team, what's the best starting point for everything?
So I think social media on LinkedIn is where we are most active. And that would be our recommendation. And go to ZeroNorth.com. And there you would find much more information around who we are. And any open positions, we are still hiring and expanding at a rapid speed. So anyone interested, well, reach out.
Well, I'll add that to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily on all those different platforms. And I think as we all begin to explore uncharted digital waters together, it's not just about the technology. And I love that phrase you used a few moments ago. If we save $1, we save emissions, and also about helping our customers get value from that technology. It's so much more than just technology. And I think, unlike humans, data doesn't make snap decisions based on currently available weather information, nor does it react to geopolitical changes on impulse. There's so many big talking points about the great work you're doing, but just thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you so much, Neil. Really appreciate it.
And that concludes a fascinating conversation there with Søren from Zero North. It really is, for me, been an eye-opening experience, learning about the incredible potential of data and technology in transforming the shipping industry and promoting a greener, more efficient future. It's an area I wasn't too familiar with, and I've learned so much today, and I hope you have too. So I cannot thank Søren enough for coming on and exploring the challenges that the global economy faces, discovering how companies such as Zero North are using data and technology to navigate these uncharted digital waters, ultimately ensuring sensible decision-making, even when everything else seems too complex and crazy to manage. And I think we all know what that feels like at the moment. So for me, it's reassuring to know that innovators like Søren and Zero North are leading this charge towards a more sustainable future for global trade. But if you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe, rate and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. And join me again bright and early tomorrow morning. We'll explore a completely different industry and how technology is making a huge impact, not just on that, but in our world too. So thanks for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.